So, hello everybody. Welcome to another episode of P.A.R. Real Talk. My name is Paddy. I'll be the host of the show. Welcome to Power is Radio. And as usual, I have a super special guest on the show today. So, if I get you to please introduce yourself, tell us your name, where you're from, and what you do, please.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm Jennifer Heller, and I live in the San Francisco Bay Area in California. And I'm on a mission to help people become prepared for extreme weather and other disasters. I am the creator of the Disaster Playbook, a step-by-step guide that guides you every step of the way through preparing your family for disasters and other emergencies.
Nice, nice, nice. Like where you left it there. And when I got this, I was pretty intrigued. Disaster preparedness. So in your book, or like in the bit that I received, is since you started this as a with personal strategy, and that's what led to this. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so here in California, we have been subject to a lot of wildfires in recent years, and I have personally had two families in my extended family lose their homes to wildfires in the last 9 years. And so watching what they went through really motivated me to prepare my family. And when I started to prepare my family, I was so overwhelmed by the resources that were available. You hear about preppers, and preppers have this like connotation of like going to really crazy measures and doing, things like stockpiling tons of food and ammo and guns. And that's not me. And I wanted to know what reasonable preparedness was for a modern family, not somebody who lives in the boonies, but somebody who lives in a city, and what that kind of preparedness looks like. And it was really hard to find that answer because all of the resources out there were pretty extreme. A lot of people go down the prepper rabbit hole and go all out. And I'm not, I want to just get prepared and get back to my life.
Nice, nice, nice. So, and then is that what led to this? Here comes the apocalypse.
Yes. So I'm a designer and I build websites, do branding. That's my trade. And so I was like, this is ripe for somebody to come in and make it fun because it's a really boring subject. And I have a dark sense of humor. If something's not entertaining, I'm not interested. I'm a very visual person and I just like fun. I like to enjoy my life. And so I was like, well, people deserve a system that guides them through and entertains them along the way and takes kind of the stress, and because it's a heavy topic, right? Disaster preparedness, emergencies. You don't want to do it. Nobody wants to do it. Like literally nobody wants to do it except maybe some crazy preppers out there, right? But I certainly didn't want to do it. I did not want to do it at all. And so I was like, well, what would make me do it? And the way that I wound up attacking that problem was by integrating lots of funny jokes, good graphics, illustrations along the way, as well as just like literal checkboxes. So it's like today you do this, you check it off. Now you're done. Do another thing tomorrow, or do it once a week on Thursdays. Like set a schedule, get it done, and move on with your life, right? How many of us have it gnawing at the back of our head that we need to prepare and we haven't done anything about it, right?
I like that. Like that a lot. As they say, if you fail to prepare, you prepare to fail. It kind of sounds pretty straightforward. And was there that aha moment where you realized there was a need for a tool like the disaster playbook?
Yeah, so I will tell you, I went to ready.gov, which is the US government's website to help you prepare. And like I had been doing this research and I'd bought the domain name Here Comes Apocalypse, and I was like, oh, this is a fun project. I mean, I didn't realize it wasn't actually going to be that much fun, but there have been fun parts of it. And I went to ready.gov and they were like, use our form to prepare your family. And I was like, oh, they have a form. Okay, well, maybe I don't have to do this project anymore, right? So I click on the link and I'm like, okay, here's the form. And the form is literally a text box that says enter your disaster plan. And they didn't tell me what a disaster plan was. They didn't give me examples to model it after. And the question that I spent, a good year researching is what is a disaster plan, right? I feel like everybody's like, oh, well, I have some gear, I have some extra food, I'm prepared. Well, that's if you're all at home, okay? Like I have a family of four, right? We are never in the same place, right? We're scattered all over town. My husband works, far away. Like in my mind, being all at home is like a dream apocalypse, which is a joke, right? Obviously we don't want any apocalypses, but like if we're all at home, that's great. We're all together. But what if we're not all at home? After Hurricane Helene in North Carolina, it took 28 days to restore cell phone service to everybody. There
Mm,
are a lot of situations where you're not going to be able to rely on your usual communication apparatus, your cell phone, right? You might not have access to the cloud, and unfortunately, extreme weather is getting worse and worse, and so we're likely going to see more and more of these scenarios.
no, I like that. Where you touched on, especially people being just kind of drifted apart. Um, and yeah, you have no cell phone, you have no way of reaching them. So there was this mention of mompreneur. Um, what does that bring, or how does it bring, and what approach do you use to the traditional emergency preparedness resources?
Yeah, well, I first became interested in preparedness when I had my first kid, right? Because all of a sudden I had a lot more at stake. I had more to lose. I cared a lot more about what the future looked like because I really, really loved this little baby, right? And that was at this, well, I still do. And that was at the same time when my family members started losing homes. And I was like, oh man, it's one thing if like it's just me, right? Like, I mean, I'm pretty spoiled. I like certain things, my earplugs at night and stuff like that. But I would be okay. But it's really different when you've got kids involved. And so, being a mom and also an entrepreneur, a mompreneur, I had this different, perspective on preparedness. And I'm also a layperson, right? I am not from a disaster preparedness space. I didn't work at FEMA. So I looked at it without any preconceived notions of what disaster preparedness was and was like, whoa, this is confusing. I read so many books about disaster preparedness to figure out what reasonable preparedness looked like, and they were full of crazy advice. This one woman told you to bury a fridge in your backyard to keep your go bags inside and then plant flowers on top of it to keep your neighbors from noticing that you had this stockpile of gear. And I'm just like, who's gonna do that? Like crazy people are gonna do that. Nobody reasonable is gonna do it. And plus, a lot of us live in apartments or houses without room to bury a fridge, right? And so that is just not reasonable advice for the modern family. So I was like, well, what is reasonable advice for a modern family? And so that's what I set out to really figure out. And like it's really accessible steps like setting up designated meeting places where your family's going to meet if you can't meet at home, setting up an out of town contact to be your emergency relay and practicing that, right? Being ready to communicate in alternative methods if the situation calls for it.
Wow, that is really, you did really think deep about it. And how did you go about designing these checklists and templates to be both effective and accessible for busy families?
I say that my superpower is breaking down complicated information into easy to understand pieces. I've always done that in my career. And so we really just kind of took all the different steps, and there's so many because it is a big thing to do, and we broke it out into like, okay, here's what it is to create a plan. Here's what it is to kind of do some basic work, right? Like getting CPR and first aid trained. Maybe you're not thinking about that. Keeping your hallways clear of debris so that if emergency responders need to come into your home, that they're not tripping on things. If you have to evacuate in a hurry, that you're not creating a secondary emergency around the first emergency. And like, you always think, oh, I got to keep the house clean. What a bummer, or what a pain in that. But when you look at it from a disaster preparedness perspective and from an emergency preparedness perspective, you're like, oh, well, I guess I do have to keep my hallways clear. It's a different way of looking at it. So we really kind of, first of all, just kind of got a lay of the land. What is all the advice people give? What is reasonable advice that really makes sense? One of the steps that we have people do, which is something that you don't think about as disaster preparedness, is getting all of your important papers in order. Bureaucracy isn't going to stop with a disaster, unfortunately. And so having physical copies of like your insurance policies and the deed to your home and your marriage certificate can be really important in certain situations if you need to prove that you're married to your spouse to get into the hospital, or you need to prove that you live where you live to get back to your home after an evacuation, where they actually ask for some physical proof that you live there. And, if the cloud's down, you're not going to be able to easily get that. So having all of that lined up, and yes, it's super boring. Nobody wants to do it. But once you do it, you're done, right? And really just broke out all the steps that felt reasonable and gave people like what assignments. So it's sort of like if you're really good at school, or even if you weren't good at school, you've just got an easy to-do list rather than going down the internet prepper hole and like try to figure out all of the different things you might do and figure out what to do first and what to do next. So we break it out really easy.
It's really cool. Sounds like something everybody or anybody can follow. It's the bite-sized checklist. So that's really good. Thank you. And just want to ask what's a common misconception people have about preparing for um, the playbook. What's your playbook helps people to correct about their misconceptions?
Yeah, I think a real common misconception is just thinking that gear is preparedness, right? That like, oh, if I've got some flashlights and some extra food and some extra water, I'm prepared, which is really important. You want to have that, but true preparedness is about coordinated action and proactive communication. So like figuring out your designated meeting places, where your family's going to meet, figuring out how you're going to communicate. And we break it all down. We give you templates to fill out so that you don't have to figure it out, right? There's nothing that you figure out. You just decide amongst yourselves, um, and then fill it out, and you're good to go. The other thing that I think that people do a lot of is they'll buy gear and then they don't test it, right? They have an emergency radio, they've never used it, right? I have an emergency radio here at the office. I admit I've never used it, right? Like, but you need to get that out of the package and try it so that in a disaster scenario, you're not figuring it out for the first time. It's really hard to do things and to make decisions when you're triggered and feeling stressed and emotional. These situations are really emotional. They can be really, really intense. And so, whatever you can do to give yourself a better chance is, I think, really important work to do. Another thing that we talk about in the disaster playbook is mental health preparation. So, thinking ahead of time about all the members of your family and how they deal with stress. What are things that will help them in the moment to be able to get through it, right? And so I have things like CBD gummies and sleeping pills in my go bag because I know I struggle to sleep in my bed. So, like, I always imagine my family stuck in a high school gym, right? And we can't be at home. High school gyms are very common locations where they put up a temporary shelter. So if we're in this high school gym together, we don't know what's happening to our home. Maybe we do know, maybe we lost it, but for whatever reason, we're not there. What are the things that's going to make that experience okay for us? I've got books, I've got toys for the kids, right? And so, a lot of people buy like a 1-day emergency kit online, which is a totally reasonable way to go. Get that, test your equipment, add in some personal stuff, a little bottle of booze, whatever it is that's going to help you through that moment. I have toothbrushes, toothpaste, lotion, right? Because I, I need to have my lotion.
Great, great, great. Like that answer. And it is something that okay, yeah, you can be prepared, and as you said, people buy all these different gadgets, but it's a bit more than the gadgets, maybe the mental side of things, and actually the practicing it, so it becomes almost second nature. While rather than thinking while you're all stressed, you kind of naturally just do those things rather than that trying to figure it out when you're already stressed. So I've really I like your answers. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I want to kind of go into this bit, like, how do you balance, technical accuracy with the lighter tones in your writing?
Yeah, well, hopefully people understand the jokes. Like we have a joke on one page that's like, better start wearing a helmet at all times because you never know when something's going to come out of the sky. Like we have these like dumb jokes. I think of them as dad jokes, right? They're corny, they're silly, but hopefully they're very obvious jokes because they're not accompanied by like a checkbox next to it. So it's not like buy a helmet, wear it every day for the rest of your life, right? We didn't give you a checkbox there. That's crazy. Don't do that. I mean, if you want to do it, do it. Whatever, you do you. But so I think that we did a good job of differentiating the fun bits from the real bits. But it is a dark subject, and I think it is pretty tough to stomach, which, is another reason why it's important to just have a checklist to follow rather than having to figure it out by yourself. The other thing that I like to say is that in my household, obviously, I'm the one motivating us for disaster preparedness. And in every household, there's usually one person who's like, oh my gosh, I'm stressed about this. We need to do XYZ. We need to follow the playbook and become prepared for disasters. And what I like to say is like, you can say that I make you do it, right? Like, I am telling you to prepare for disasters, and you can hate me because it's better than hating your spouse, right? Because you can have like conflict in the family around like, well, I don't want to, like, why are you forcing us to do this? And you can literally say, well, because Jennifer Heller from Here Comes Apocalypse told me we have to, you know? Um, and I'm telling you that we have to. Unfortunately, I wish we didn't. I like to say, I'm sorry you have to prep because I am sorry. I really wish that extreme weather wasn't getting worse and that this wasn't where we wound up. When I started this project, I thought it was like a 10, 20-year project, and it turned into a 3 to 4 year project really quick because all of a sudden fires were so much worse. All of a sudden, hurricanes were worse, extreme weather is happening with insane frequency all around the globe, and it's no longer optional. Preparing isn't just for preppers anymore.
Airing is for all of us. That's really, really cool. And what role do you think the community plays in disaster readiness beyond individual preparation, that is?
Yes. So I think that community preparedness is huge. And one of the steps that I recommend is to get to know your neighbors, right? Who in your neighborhood do you know that you can rely on in the event of an emergency? As we think about designated meeting places, right? Where your family's going to meet if you can't meet at home, pick some place where you pick it in community, right? Other families or other people your friends, pick the same designated meeting place. So, like ours is our local school. So if my kids wind up there and I'm not there, they will see another adult that they know. And so there will be more people to cooperate to help reunite our family than if we pick some place where nobody else is, right? I think that community preparedness is really huge. I am a little amazed at the way cities, like my local city and they are trying to get people prepared, but I think they need to be trying a whole lot more because it is really important, especially with the weather. being as extreme as it is lately. So, um, I, and if we do it in community, there's a lot of benefits. A, like I said, more peoples to cooperate with, and B, you can buy gear in bulk and get savings. And a lot of gear, because of is not necessarily built that well nowadays. Like I buy a bunch of flashlights and my kids manage to break them within an hour. It's amazing. Like, and then I'm like, oh, I've got this flashlight. I turn it on, it doesn't turn on, right? And I'm ah, and apparently I'm buying too cheap flashlights. That's what a firefighter told me is that I need to spend more money on my flashlights. Well, when you're buying gear as a community, you can pool your resources and buy better equipment and also save space, right? A lot of us don't have a lot of space for all this gear and junk and stuff. So if you and your neighborhood get together and set up a spot where you have all of your stuff and work together, you're going to save money. You're going to have more people, so you're going to be more resilient, and you're going to have higher quality gear.
Mm, oh, that's great answer. Great advice. And I just want to say, what's the kind of looking at your challenges and successes? What's the most surprising reaction or feedback that you've received about Here Comes the Apocalypse?
Well, I'll say the best feedback we've gotten was from a first responder in Nashville, Tennessee, and Pete said that he's gotten all sorts of preparedness resources and they're all incomplete or overwhelming, and that the disaster playbook is the first resource he's found that is completely complete and easy to use and also entertaining at times. And so he said that he recommends it to everybody. So that was a huge, huge win for us. And it makes me feel really good that first responders feel like the system that we've created is really effective. I think the biggest challenge we're having is reaching people because most people they don't want to do it. And I didn't want to do it, which is why I created the playbook because I didn't want to have to figure out all of this. And so I knew I wasn't alone and that other people didn't want to also. I get it. I super get it. We've all got a lot going on. At the end of the day, you're exhausted. You just want to watch a show and veg out. And that's what I want to do too. But 10 minutes of preparedness, per day, you will meaningfully increase your resilience in the face of a disaster. And future you is going to thank you if it comes to pass, and nobody wants it to happen. But future you will be really happy that you spent that time and that energy and those resources on this important work.
That's really, really cool. And while we're here, let's just cover this bit. About like, where can people want to reach out to you to find out more? They want to find out about the book. Do you have a website? Do you have a
Yep.
social handles?
We're herecomesapocalypse.com. We're Hello Apocalypse on Instagram and Facebook, and we're the Disaster Playbook on TikTok. And anybody can reach me anytime at jen@herecomesapocalypse.com. Seriously, send me your questions. Tell me what's going on because we're all freaked out. It's a real time. It's super real. So I'm here. I'm here to give advice and I'm here to answer questions.
So much for that. Be sure to go and check them out and follow. And what's next for Here Comes the Apocalypse? Are there new tools, courses, collaborations, or anything else on the horizon?
Yeah, so this summer we're releasing our vacation readiness checklist because preparedness is important on vacation too. So we're launching that in the next couple weeks, and we have a free 5-day Kickstart Your Prep challenge, super free. You get one step every day, and each of those steps will meaningfully improve your resilience. So look for that on our website at herecomesapocalypse.com.
That's really, really cool. Well, we'll be sure to definitely go and check that out. And kind of let me maybe digress a little bit to follow with your style. That so the playbook includes a lot of dad jokes. Um, on a scale of 1 to like God, please make it stop. How committed are you to pawns in crisis?
Well, that's a good question. I think that I have not lived through really intense crises, right? But I am somebody who is very I like comforts. I require a fan at night to sleep, right? And so it's important to me that we all do our best to prepare for ourselves. So I think that I am probably about a 7 as a like preparedness wise. And then I like to joke about like how terrible deaths would be, right? So like when I think about like different ways that I could die, I mean, I always say I pray for a swift death. I think that there are a lot of potential ways we could go, and I hope to go quickly.
Well, I suppose it's that's the best way to go. It's just yeah. Well, let's not dwell on that. So let me ask another kind of random question. So have you? This you've got to be honest. Have you ever bribed your kids with snacks just to run a disaster drill?
Absolutely. Are you kidding? I will do anything to snacks, TV, whatever. But I also just bring in drills to like everyday life. Well, we'll be like coloring on the floor. My kids are little, they're 3 and 8. And so we'll be coloring on the living room floor and I'll just be like, quick, there's an earthquake, because I'm in California, it's earthquake territory, right? What do we do? And we all dive under the table and practice our covering our heads. And so we were walking down the street the other day and I said, if there was an earthquake, what would we do? And like we had a discussion about like the way we would arrange our bodies in that particular space to be as safe as possible, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so I think that, yes, bribe your kids, do whatever, bribe yourself. That's actually one of the steps that we have in the playbook is to brainstorm some rewards. Like, if you do all this work, what are you going to get yourself? Like, you deserve it. You are attacking this terrible topic head on and handling it. You deserve a reward at the end. Your kids deserve a reward at the end. All of it. The drills section of the book is at the end, right? So it's like first you do some basics, then you make your plan, then you get your gear, and you can do it in whatever order, and we make that clear. But, that's how we have it arranged. And then it's drills. And a lot of people don't make it to drills. A fire emergency is the most likely emergency that's going to happen in that any of us would face. So having a fire drill is a very reasonable thing to do. Like, okay, just pretend there's a fire. How do you get out, right? They have them at schools, have them at home. Drills are a really important way to actually create muscle memory and to work out some kinks in your plans. And you can do it live where you actually move your bodies, and you can also just do it at the dinner table. Like if there was a hurricane, what would we do? And review your checklist of what you're going to do and make sure that everybody knows their roles.
I like that, and yet that was the word I was looking for. Now, muscle memory. And you just practice it enough that it just becomes second nature to you. So that's a great, great answer. And really great advices here. And just quickly, because time is running, that
Yeah.
do you think if the internet goes down forever, is that technically a disaster or is it really?
I think that's an apocalypse. You know, I think of an apocalypse as a life-changing event. I think that's how I've approached it with the idea, here comes the apocalypse, right? We will all experience life-changing events. COVID was a life-changing event. It changed our world overnight, right? You could lose a loved one and it would be a personal apocalypse, right? Your life is suddenly completely different. And so, preparing for all of these life-changing events is my mission, right? How do we come out the other side in better shape than we could have, right? I mean, it's obviously going to be intense, but how can we improve the outcomes? So I think losing the internet forever would be hugely life-changing, especially for those of us who've had it most of our lives or all of our lives, right? And I think as we think about resilience as humans, being able to be without your phone, practicing that, right? Because in a disaster scenario, you've got the juice in your phone and you got to make it last. So some of the steps that we give you are to like quit extra apps, turn down your screen brightness, so that you can conserve battery and make your phone last as possible. If you're getting gear, get, a solar powered charging bank for your phone so that you can charge it. But even that is going to limit how much juice you have. You're not going to be able to play Candy Crush the entire time you're in that high school gym. You're just not going to be able to. So pack some cards, pack a coloring book, pack a book, right? So that you've got magazine. You've got something to do that isn't your phone. We're all so addicted to it. And I am worried about I'm worried about our abilities to recover because we are so dependent on our phones.
Mhm. Absolutely, and I think that's why, because this crosses not just the kids. We like we are kids, they play on their phone so much. Well, yeah, as you said, some of us that's literally our livelihood. That's so yeah, it will be an apocalypse. And just as a kind of wrap up, if you could get one message across to every parent of children, I suppose, about disaster preparedness, what would it be?
Start today. Please start preparing your family today. Think about how you will handle different situations if you're not all at home or if you're at home. Think about it all, right? Because you don't know when it's going to happen, but chances are that we will face some disaster scenarios in our lifetimes.
Mhm. Perfect summary. Start today. You know, every little, before you get that muscle memory. This has been an amazing, amazing show. I just like to say thank you so much for coming to bless us with your wealth of wisdom and yeah, getting us all ready to start thinking about it and start making the action to preparing for well potential disasters. So yeah, thank you so much. Any final remarks from you?
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Most welcome. So yeah, well, until we meet again, take care.
You're
You
traveling on the
too.
airwaves of Power 8 Radio.